On this week's episode of A Drier Dose of Disney, Jared explains Disneyland's Magic Keys and which ones have the best value.
Welcome to this week's episode of A Drier Dose of Disney. I'm your host, Jared Dreyer, and today we are continuing with our four-part series about annual passes at the different theme parks and which ones are worth it, which ones we recommend, and what are some of the perks and benefits that you're going to get with each one of these annual passes. And today we are going to Disneyland in Anaheim out on the West Coast. If you listened to our last episode, we were in Orlando at Disney World, and we talked through the annual passes down there and which ones we recommend. And we also compared it a little bit to the Disneyland Magic Keys, which is what we're going to spend our time talking about today. But before we dive into that, we do want to ask, wherever you're listening to us, or if you're watching us on YouTube, which is actually a benefit on this episode because we are sharing our screen and we are walking through some of these Magic Keys today. We do ask that you click that subscribe button so that way you're getting this content delivered into your inbox every single week. And then in addition to that, if you found any tips or tricks that help save you some money or save you some time, please support us over at Patreon. You can find that link down in our description of our podcast or in the description on YouTube. And with that, those subscriptions over at Patreon help keep this podcast going. In addition to the fact you're going to get some really cool perks out of it, you're going to get early access to some episodes, and you're going to get some free stuff there. So we do appreciate our supporters. We thank all of you that are supporting us right now at Patreon, but that's a good way to keep this show going. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into today's episode, and we're going to be talking about the Magic Keys over at Disneyland. And that's what they call their annual passes here. If you're watching on my screen here, you can see that they have 3 different Magic Keys that are up on the screen. And in fact, there's actually 4 Magic Keys. So we're going to take you through all 4 of those today, and we're going to compare and contrast. Now, I will say, if you listen to our last episode where we talked about Disney World, we do think that there's a little more bang for your buck down at Disney World. You're going to get a little bit more benefit down there than you do with the Magic Keys at Disneyland. And that's in part due to things that are all included in all of the passes down there. In addition to the fact, there are 4 parks down in Orlando. So you get a chance to visit all 4 parks with a single pass down there, and you just get tons of free stuff. So it's a really cool setup. But that doesn't mean that the Disneyland Magic Keys aren't good. In fact, they are really good. We just think that the value is a little bit stronger down in Orlando. So it all depends on where you frequent, where you live, where you go. Of course, both parks, both Disneyland and Disney World, have knockouts if you don't live in their state. So for example, today we're going to talk about 4 passes, and the reason you don't see one on the screen is because that's for Southern California residents only. Same thing in Florida. If you're in Florida, you can only get the Pixie Pass today, which is the lowest level. And then you have to renew to upgrade, which is what happens here at Disneyland as well. And then they have the highest level that's open to everyone, but that one's much, much more expensive, but you do get some really cool perks out of it. So that's what we want to cover for you guys today. So let's talk about right out of the gates. The Magic Keys over at Disneyland, they all do have some similarities to them. The bottom 3 all get a 10% merchandise discount and a 10% dining discount. And they all get a 20% off the Genie Plus service over at Disneyland. That's very unique to the Magic Keys. That's something that they do not do in Orlando with the annual passes down there. So that is a distinct call out. So if you're interested in the Genie Plus service and you like to utilize that and you want to save some money there, the Disney Magic Keys are going to be a little bit better for you at Disneyland than the annual passes down at Disney World, because Disney World does not offer that. And you can see that on my screen here, right in the dead center, that they offer that 20% off. In fact, when you get to the higher levels, they actually even give you more dining and merchandise discounts, which is really cool. And we'll talk about those in just a second. But what we want to do is we want to start at the lowest end. And at the lowest end is the Imagine Pass. And that's the one that they don't have listed here. So you guys can see that are watching on the screen, we have the Inspire, we have the Believe, and the Enchant Magic Keys. There's also an Imagine one, and the Imagine one is only available to Southern California residents. It does cost $449. So when you think about it, if you live in Southern California, that's a pretty good deal if you're going to be going to the parks fairly often. The issue with the Imagine Pass, and this is what we really disliked about it when you compare it to the Pixie Dust Pass in Orlando, is it is a Monday through Thursday pass. So you're losing out on Friday. You lose out on the weekends. Of course, every single major holiday is blocked out, and most of the summer is blocked out. It's not a great pass if you want to be going very frequently, especially on the weekends. It's not going to work for you. But that Imagine Pass, if you live in Southern California and you want to go Monday through Thursday, it's going to be a good pass for doing that. It does give you 25% off parking. And this is one of the points that I really think Disney should get consistent between its two parks. And that is in Orlando, regardless of what pass you get free parking. So even at the lowest level, the Pixie Dust Pass, you get the free parking, which saves you $25 every time you visit when you drive. In Anaheim, they start with giving you 25% off their parking, which is only a few dollars of savings. And you are still going to pay for parking every time you go. Keep in mind also in Anaheim, there's not a lot of other parking options. You really don't want to be parking at other places. You will get towed. It is a busy city. It is tough to navigate. So you really do want to go straight into the Disney parks and into their parking structure or onto one of their parking lots. Same thing in Orlando. It's so spread out. It's actually the opposite. It's so spread out. You do not want to get there any other way than driving in unless you're taking Disney transportation in. Because you can't walk in like you can in Anaheim. You can't park somewhere else and get in there. You're going to be subject to doing Disney parking at both parks. The difference being is down in Orlando, they make it free for all their annual pass holders, which I think is a huge advantage. And we have saved so much just in free parking. We've paid for our passes down there. Now in Anaheim, you're only going to save 25%, which means you're going to be paying for parking every single time you go. I think that's a huge disadvantage to the Magic Keys out in Anaheim. And I think parking should be free on every single one. So they do have two different groups working on this. One group does the Magic Keys in Disneyland, and the other group does the annual passes at Disney World. I think the two groups should get together, and that's one thing that they should fix probably in the next year or so, I would hope, is to get that fixed and to make the parking free for everybody on every single pass. With that, you can only do 2 reservations on the Imagine Pass. If you guys are watching on the screen, you can see where the reservations are down here below Genie Plus, and we'll talk about those in just a second, but you can only do 2 reservations. Now, the question is, do you need more than 2? Only having the 2 parks, you've got the Disneyland Park, and then you have California Adventure. Do you need more than 2? Maybe if you're going to be going for multiple days with a group of friends or something like that, but again, you can only go Monday through Thursday anyways, so you're going to be missing out on some of that. So the Imagine Pass is tough to understand because of how many blackout dates they have. Obviously, they don't advertise it a whole lot, so it's not one that a lot of the Disney lovers are going to be able to find or get a hold of. The next one, let's go up from the Imagine Pass, is the Enchant Pass, which you guys can see on the screen. Right now, this one is only available for renewal, meaning that once you have a pass, just like in Orlando, once you've had it for a year and you go up for your renewal period, you can then move into these other passes. The Enchant Pass costs $699, so a little bit of a jump. You're talking a good $250 jump from the Imagine Pass, and it is a Sunday through Friday key, which means that you can only really use it Sunday through Friday. Saturdays are all blocked off throughout the year, and then they block off portions of the summer, and they block off portions of the holidays. So because of that, and if you go online and you can do the comparison, you can click the view calendar. You can see when those dates are. It is a little bit more of a restricted pass. This one is closer, I believe personally, to the Pixie Dust Pass out in Orlando. But again, this one only gives you 25% off parking. What's the deal, Disneyland? Give people free parking if they're paying for a pass. I think especially if they're paying $700, $699 for this pass, give them free parking. That's a lot of money. And if you think about it, you're going to have to go at least 7 or 8 times to make it worth your value to get that money out of it. But then that's 7 or 8 times you're paying for 75% of parking. Is it really worth it? And again, you do get the 20% off Genie Plus, which is nice, 10% off merchandise, 10% off shopping. If you guys were watching on the screen, you can see when we scroll down that those discounts, what they are over here as well. I'm going to scroll back up and keep this towards the top so that we can keep talking about these keys. So the Enchant Key is a good key. Like I said, Sunday through Friday. You are getting 6 days a week when you're not hitting the holidays. You're not hitting the major summer times. So maybe that's a really good option for you. You can do up to 4 reservations at a time, which I think is fantastic. I think that's a really good breaking point between the Enchant and the Imagine Pass, is that you can do the 4. So, if Sunday's your day and you want to go and you're not worried about the holidays, Enchant is probably a really good option for you, minus the parking. Again, I think that parking, that's what really gets me going here. The next one's the Believe Magic Key. And this one is, again, only available through renewal. It does cost $1,099, so basically $1,100 to get. So you're making some big jumps in pricing, which are much larger jumps than what you're going to see down in Orlando. And this one is available most days. It does block quite a few Saturdays and then most holidays, obviously. It does give you 50% off parking at this point. And again, I'm saying for $1,100 a pass. So think about it. Like we have a family of 3. This is going to cost you over $3,000 to get everybody the same pass here. I think that is a big disservice to people, is to not give them free parking. But so I wrote on my notes here, come on, man. It's like ESPN on Monday Night Football. Come on, man. You can do up to 6 reservations, which is really nice. But here's where the bonus really starts kicking in, is you do get Photo Pass. So if you remember the episode where we talked about Disney World and their annual passes, the Photo Pass was an add-on. It does cost $100. Now, here's the trade-off. Basically, what they did is they made this very close to the Sorcerer's Pass down there, but they included the Photo Pass and everybody gets it, but everyone's paying the $100. If you remember that episode that we talked about Disney World, the I can do this all day tip of the day was to only buy Photo Pass once for your entire group because you don't need it for everyone. In this case, you don't get that option. So they've taken that away from you and they're charging you for it. So it is a cool perk that everyone's going to get it at this point in time. And if maybe I'm there with my daughter versus my wife being there, because we talked about my wife's the one who normally uses it. If my wife had somewhere to go and my daughter and I went, then yeah, that'd be cool to have that Photo Pass. But it's not something that I'm going to be really using a whole lot. So I don't know how valuable that is. But that is a cool perk. I am glad to say that they did throw something in there for you. Again, you still get the 20% off the Genie Plus and all that. So that's a nice bonus. Again, that one's only available through renewal once you've had your pass for a year. The pass that's available to everyone, and this one legitimately is today available to everyone, unlike Orlando. So in Orlando, they had the Incredipass, and that one is currently not being sold. When it is being sold, that one is the one that's available to everyone. But here they've got the Inspire Magic Key out at Disneyland, and this one actually is available. And we do have some friends that we know here in Denver that just got this. So they were very excited about it. They like to go all the time, and they said it was totally worth it for them. But as you guys can see on the screen, this one costs $1,600. So this one is much more expensive than the other passes. It does give you some extra value, which is really cool. And the best value that it gives you right out of the gates is free parking. So you don't get free parking until you get to the Inspire Magic Key. But here it is. Now you have free parking. If you're looking at the fact that it's about $1,600, it's going to take you ballpark 16 visits for you to save the money or for you to break even on this. Now, if I can honestly say, if I lived in Southern California, this may be the one that I would go for. And the reason is because of the free parking. This pass is available pretty much, this is available every single day except Christmas through New Year's, which is, I think, a little bit odd, especially at $1,600, that they force you to actually buy tickets if you're going to be there for the Christmas holiday. I do get that's their busiest time of the year, and they're trying to keep that crowd level in moderation. But at the same time, for $1,600, like, give the people the keys to the castle here, man. Let them go during Christmas and New Year's like the Incredipass does down in Orlando. But you do get the rest of the year. So all the other holidays are wide open. Every single weekend's wide open. So you can go all the time. So if you're going to go to the parks 16, 20 plus times during the year, the Inspire Key is definitely worth it. Now, when you're adding up all the people in your family, again, for a family of 4, you are talking about $6,400. So that's real expensive. But for some people, that may be one trip for a week down to Orlando. So if you're in the California area, it may totally be worth it. The other advantage they get, so free parking. We already know how I feel about parking. You do get the 20% off Genie Plus, which is a cool perk. You do get the 6 reservations, which is nice. But this is where they bump your merchandise and your food and beverage discount up to 20% off and 15% off. So you do get a little bit more savings there if you're going to always be in the parks and you're always going to be eating there. We like to say that what's my break-even point? We already talked about that a little bit here with how many days it's going to take for you to break even. And that's if you're counting it at about $100 a day. Like my wife said, when we talked about it on the last episode for Disney World, since we do have passes down there, you can save a ton of money through free parking, through 20% off your merchandise, 15% off food, maybe your Genie Plus, the Photo Pass. You're going to save money there. But if you're going to have to go 16, 20 times to make it worth it, you're also going to be buying food and you're going to be spending the other 85% or the other 80% on the merchandise. And so they're going to get your money. So we definitely know that we spend way more at Disney than most other people out there, but we do save quite a bit by having our annual pass. So you're going to have to weigh that out for you as to what is the benefit for you and is it totally worth it. Now, I will say, and we talked about this a little bit on the last episode when we were talking about Disney World, these merchandise discounts really do come in handy when you're buying big ticket items. So for example, we did put some artwork in our condo down in Orlando, and we went to the Epcot Arts Festival and picked out some there. And when you start knocking 20% off some of the artwork and stuff like that, you're saving hundreds of dollars. So that could be a significant savings for you. And if that's something that you like to do is decorate your home with all the Disney home stuff, then I definitely encourage you want to get an annual pass to help just save some money there, especially if it's something you're going to buy anyways. And honestly, that's something that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about on the last episode that I will a little bit here, just because we've got a little bit more time today, is the fact that if you're the kind of person that I want to buy the Disney merch, I want to be on Shop Disney all the time, I want to buy the cool sweatshirts, I want to buy the cool shirts. I've got my Mickey shirt on today. You guys can see that. If you're big into the ears, I want to buy the ears all the time. I want to buy the different pins that are coming out. If you're a pin collector, it is then probably totally worth getting a Magic Key or an annual pass. Because keep in mind, you can live in Colorado, which is where we live, and you could have an annual pass to one or the other park and still get that discount. Now, the discount's a little bit richer down in Orlando and the pass is a little less expensive, but today they're only selling them to Florida residents and the Incredipass isn't available. So you may want to buy something if you live in Colorado for the Inspire Key. If you're going to be buying a lot of Disney merchandise all the time or decorating your house like that, to get that 20% off savings. That adds up really quick. Now, if you think about it, you're going to have to spend a lot of money for it to break even for you. But if you're going to go to the parks maybe twice during the year and you're going to spend 3 or 4 days out there each time and you're buying all the merchandise, then do the math, figure it out. You may be saving money by doing an annual pass at that point, at least for that one person. You may not save it for doing it for your entire family. And with your entire family, you may just buy their park tickets when you go. But for one person in your family, at least then you get the photo pass. You're going to get all the merchandise discounts. And that's the person who should be buying the food and buying the merchandise when you're in the parks. So that way you can save the money. So there may be an advantage there. Again, I tell you, go out there, do the calculations yourself, figure out what you want to buy, figure out what you're interested in, and then just figure out, hey, if I'm saving 20%, what does that add up to? And if I'm going to go a couple times during the year, what does that add up to as well? Not to mention the free parking. And I'm going to keep hounding on that just because it is such a big savings when you're down in Orlando. All 4 of their passes have it in Orlando. I think all 4 passes here in California should also have it. They have ample parking down there. They're not in a parking issue down there. So they should be giving that out for free. So really good food for thought when we're talking about the different cost analysis and comparisons. Again, the Believe and Enchant passes are only available when you upgrade, and the Imagine Pass is only available to Southern California residents. But you guys can decide which one's going to be right for me. How often do I want to use it? And like we talked about on our last episode with Disney World, if you're living in the California area around Anaheim and you're going to be going in and out on your own, maybe you don't want the pass that's available every single day because you want to avoid the larger crowds in the busier times of the year. You may want to avoid spring break. You may want to avoid the 4th of July. And you may want to get a pass that works when the crowds are at a lower level. Totally an option. And your break-even point is going to be a lot quicker then. And you're still going to get 10% off the merchandise and 10% off the food and beverage and a little bit of a savings on your parking. So with that, we wish you a magical week as you're planning your next vacation. Join us next week on our episode as we hop over to Universal Studios. And the next 2 episodes, we're going to be talking about Universal. We're going to do Hollywood versus Florida. And the cool thing is their passes are actually really similar. So a lot of good things to talk about there, a lot of really good comparisons to draw. And we do also have annual passes to Orlando. So we're going to tell you our little tips and tricks with that and where we've saved the most money. So you'll definitely want to tune into that. And I will even go as far to say the really cool thing about Universal is because their annual pass cost is so much lower, you're going to hit that savings point a lot quicker. And it's totally worth it. Whether you're in California or whether you're in Florida, the annual passes at Universal are very much worth it. So it's definitely an episode you're going to want to tune into. Have a magical week. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.